Happy Mushoku Sundays, everybody. Episode 1 of Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation second season has just hit. And my gosh, on one hand, it got me. The ending had me tearful. I was just, emotions just built up. I think they absolutely nailed that ending. At the same time, a little bit miffed at a couple changes they made. Of course, my coverage of the Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation second season is going to be from the perspective of somebody that has read up to volume 12. I'm not going to spoil anything. My whole thing here is to talk about the show itself, how they nailed things, how things went, and if there's anything they skipped, I'll mention it here. But yes, episode 1 was pretty good. I have to say, overall, very good. And like I said, the ending was absolutely fantastic. But first of all, before we get started, like I promised, I did check the actual Japanese broadcast. As expected, there's nothing in this episode that was cut. I'm starting to feel like after what happened with the last episode with something being cut for the global distribution, I'm really thinking that was probably just a very rare case. I don't really necessarily see them doing that again. There is something later on that might end up getting cut in a couple episodes, but I honestly don't think they're even going to have that adapted. So, but I'll keep you guys posted. Let's jump into it. Let's hit each point one by one. Of course, we have Rudeus first arriving in the Northern Territories. The good job of kind of introducing it, bringing it in there with Counter Arrow, Suzanne, which, my gosh, her voice. Great choice. I absolutely love that Seiyu, and my gosh, Suzanne, her voice is just so amazing. So good for that big sister type that, honestly, Suzanne is. Obviously giving Rudeus a little bit of insight into the Northern Territories themselves. It didn't really put too much perspective on it, but yes, technically Rudeus is coming to the Northern Territories just out of chance. Like, he is just wandering up there. Counter Arrow, they're actually a group that's coming up to the Northern Territories because typically a lot of adventurers that are in Asura Kingdom, there's only so much they can do. If they're looking for a challenge, the only place really in the Central Continent, or at least one place, is the Northern Territories. That's an area where it's a lot more difficult. So, them being B rank, they're going to the Northern Territories. And obviously Suzanne, seeing that Rudeus looks a little glum, wants to sort of help him out. Based on Rudeus mentioning the fact that there has been a displacement incident and he's looking for his mother, this sort of does hit on Counter Arrow. As they travel to Rosenberg, Rudeus will eventually find out that Counter Arrow has actually done a lot to help out the displaced. After the whole displacement incident happened, Counter Arrow was doing a lot of stuff to help them recover. So they're very familiar with the displacement incident. So there is a little bit of aspect of them understanding that. And you sort of get a hint of that based on him saying that aspect about his mother been displaced and he's looking for her. Everybody in the carriage is pretty saddened by this. But obviously Suzanne's trying to kind of help the mood. The travel from Asura all the way up to Rosenberg is a long journey. And yeah, as she mentions, Rosenberg is like one of the first big major towns of this area. This is sort of the gateway in the Northern Territories. But yeah, they kind of nailed everything else here. Did a good job kind of introducing things, seeing that Sarah, good old Sarah, love her to death. Not too much a fan of Rudeus right off the bat. But again, they all sort of feel for him. Arriving in the town itself, Rudeus kind of getting settled. It was kind of a goofy change in the idea that when he arrives at the inn, the guy wasn't too happy to see him, but it wasn't until he dropped a whole bunch of money that the guy's like, oh wait, hey, that's a lot of money. And again, to kind of remind people, Rudeus does have all this money because, one, everything that all the spoils they got during their journeys from the Demon Continent, he had all that money. He was managing all that money, and so when everybody separated, he was just kind of stuck with it. And additionally, he did a lot of work in the refugee camp, which, yes, netted him some money as well. Which, yes, is another thing they completely skipped past in the anime adaptation. He did technically help them rebuilding certain areas of the refugee camp before he left. But here's where we're getting a significant deviation here. In the original novel, there is so much emphasis in this first night about the struggles that Rudeus is facing. Yes, they sort of failed to kind of adapt this aspect that Rudeus is obviously very impacted by Eris leaving him. He assumes that she abandoned him. He thought that they were going to live together forever. He wanted to protect her. But she left him. She ditched him. Got up and left. And this is what's really making him struggle. He has this hair in his hand, which is Eris's, which, by the way, again, in the original novel, it's her pantsu. It is her underwear. There was two things that were changed with the adaptation. One is that Eris took his underwear, and on the opposite end, he took her underwear. So it's not a lock of hair that he's keeping, it's her underwear. But this is sort of reminding him over and over and over again that she left him. And this is beating him down. He's literally coming to the north to die. The whole thing with finding Zenith, he keeps trying to remember that that's his focus. I'm here to look for Zenith. I'm here to look for Zenith. But it keeps going back to Edis. And that's sort of what you see in the following scene when he does go to the Adventure Guild. Everybody's talking about, oh man, this kid, he's just looking to have some fun. He doesn't take this stuff seriously. He's going to get chewed up and spit out. But no, obviously, he's a high-rank adventurer. But here's another kind of sad thing that's missed. Yes, he goes up there and he gives his guild card over and says, I need to disband my party. Again, this is Dead End. He was a part of Dead End, which was Edis, Rijerd, and him. And the thing that is not portrayed here is that he's sorrowful because he's having them disband this party that he spent years together with. It's breaking his heart that this thing that he loves so much, this party, is falling apart. He's removing it. And he even thinks about, man, what if one day Rijerd goes to the guild and hands his card over, Dead End's gonna disappear? What will that make him think? This weighs heavy on him. And of course, everybody else just thinks that his whole party got wiped out. So they're like, oh no, this poor kid, man, that sucks. But yes, he gets a quest for Luster Grizzlies. And this is obviously suicide for a single person, especially a mage. So they're trying to push him, you should probably get a party, and that's when Suzanne shows up and obviously recognizes that Rudius is trying to get himself killed. She sees this is the face of somebody that's trying to die. And so that's why she pulls him into the group. Which, yes, later on you get a sense that it's kind of partially that, but also partially it almost seems as if she's trying to teach Sarah a lesson. Sarah just doesn't want to have anything to do with anybody but Counter Arrow. Which, yes, later on we'll get more why. But for now, the focus is Suzanne is trying to bring this boy into the group. We're all new here. Let's come together and have a party together. Again, Suzanne's a very big sis type. You can see that with her interaction with Sarah. It's just like, this is my little sister. She's being a little bit rough. Don't worry about her. But at the same time, you never really see her reprimand Sarah too much. Because as we go along and Sarah keeps barking back at Rudius, she's sort of right in a lot of regards. Don't step out of line. This is our party formation. Keep in line. This is how we figure things out. There is a little bit of struggle within Rudius that's sort of portrayed here that's not mentioned in the anime, that yes, he does recognize these guys have a tight formation. They know exactly what each and every single one of them do. He does feel that that's a bad thing in a sense because they're not flexible. They're not experimenting with new things. They just have their formation, which I would argue is kind of a bad thing because yes, they are technically stuck in this one formation. If one of them falls, or if they lose somebody, their formation's broken. They're not flexible, but they are skilled. But yeah, Suzanne brings him in the party. He accepts it. I love that stupid face from Sarah after she drinks. Got that puffy face going on. Oh, she's so cute. Sarah is so freaking cute. And again, they're doing a pretty good job during this entire episode, sort of portraying the fact that Rudius is sensing a similarity between Sarah and Edis. His experiences, his first experiences with Edis is very similar here. And so he's getting a lot of that nostalgia. And I do like how they sort of portray that later on, after Sarah kind of barks at him as they're walking towards their job. You see how he sort of sees Ghislaine in Suzanne and Edis in Sarah. That's not in the novel, but I think it's a good way they sort of portrayed that constant reminder that he's getting of Edis. Now, yes, this is where I think most of my frustrations around the changes in the anime start. Yes, we have this brief camping scene where they talk about their formation. Rudius, they've actually fought a few times up to this point. He's seeing how they work, and he wants to do more. So yeah, he is trying to get them to say, hey, look, can I just stay on the front line? They don't know that he has this unlimited mana pool that just keeps going, so they're keeping him in formation. Additionally, like Sarah says, do you want to get shot in the back? They're not really used to having somebody, being flexible in their party, and he's a temporary member. So the least amount of impact to the party he's going to have, the better. But the sad thing is that following this argument, Rudius goes out to take a leak, and then Timothy joins him. in the novel, it mentions that he comes out and reveals his sizable wand. But yeah, they sort of have a little moment here. But the anime is really short. Man, you're pretty cool with your, incantationless spells. I mean, I only knew somebody at the school that did that. But actually what it gets more into here is he's apologizing for Sarah's, attitude. And Rudius is like, that's fine. The girl's a genius, obviously. It gets into talking about all these experiences he's had watching Sarah in combat. And he acknowledges that she's very, very skilled. Knowing the fact that there's not many adventurers that are archers. It's just pretty unheard of. What's the point in being an archer when you can be a caster? Yes, technically mana pools are limited, but all you have to do is rest and you get your mana back. Whereas with an archer, you have limited arrows. And it's not like an RPG where you can just load up on millions and millions of arrows. It carries weight. So every archer has limited arrows. Every shot has to be on point. It's noting again, Sarah is very skilled. Her shots are always on point. And she makes her own. So it's pointing out the fact that Sarah is an oddity, but at the same time, she's very skilled. Giving a little more importance to Sarah than just the fact that she's there to remind him of Edis. And yes, that's when we get into the fight with the Lester Grizzlies. This is literally, none of this is how I pictured it from the novel series. The Lester Grizzlies are sort of this breed that, depending on the season itself, will either forage for food, which normally they attack people more often. They'll breed next to lakes and everything. It sort of gives us an indication that they were, at the time, sleeping and that they could not see very well at night. So it was important to attack at night. But specifically, they did not actually scout during the day. During the day, they could have seen more of these grizzlies, but they didn't. So it's sort of a fault and a negative to them as a party. Yes, it was important to attack at night. They barely can see, and they pull that off, taking out the first group, setting down quagmires, nuking the crap out of them with Timothy. But it's through the light of the fireballs themselves they see the other group, which is mud-covered grizzlies. It wasn't Rudius listening to the ground. It's literally they seen it lit up by the flames. But here's where it frustrates me. Because they all started fleeing, and they were supposed to go back to a pre-established choke point. Again, Counter Arrow is not a bunch of idiots. And I feel like this first episode made them out to be idiots and just a bunch of cowards. They were going back to a choke point. They knew they were going to be outrun, so they all turned around and stood their ground. Every single one of them chose not to flee. And the anime sort of makes it out like Mimir and Patrice were like, oh crap, we got surrounded, so we can't flee anymore. No, they all chose to stand their ground. And that's what gives Rudius that spark and that reminder. As he's putting his hand into the bag, feeling Roxy's Ponsu, he remembers what's important. As he kind of states later on that, yes, I have lost a lot of things, but I haven't lost everything. He's reminded through seeing them fight for their lives that there's a purpose in life and that, you have people to fight for. There is a reason for surviving. That's the important thing that happens here. And it's as they're holding the line that he just nukes everything. Now, despite my frustration with how they portrayed Counter Arrow here, that some of them were fleeing, and that the only reason they fought back is because they got surrounded, it was a really cool fight. I think that very, as Adrian put it, very Lord of the Rings rotation thing with Sarah jumping in the air and doing like a bunch of jump shots. Oh, it's cheesy, but it did look cool. It was a really cool looking shot. And that's probably why they chose to have them fleeing and then get stuck surrounded so they can have this really cool surrounding shot. A lot of the close-ups of the grizzlies themselves, despite the original approach of the grizzlies, it looked really cool. The grizzlies looked really, really cool. And they could have easily used CGI. Thank goodness. It was a cool looking fight. All that stuff was really awesome. And yes, Rudius doing the big nuke was really, really cool. So yeah, honestly, overall, this episode, yes, here and there, a face turn looks a little awkward. I think for overall, though, really did restore a lot of my hope for the show visually. Still, again, not on the levels of the first season, part 1, for sure, but still look really good. Returning back to Rosenberg, yes, I'm so glad they actually included Counter Arrow and how Timothy handles the other adventurers. I swear I was convinced that was going to get cut, but no. A lot of emphasis on the idea that a new fresh face is in town, coming in there with a big victory, it's going to create a lot of gossip and anger amongst the adventurers. And so how Timothy sort of counters that, Counter Arrow, is that he likes to buy drinks for everybody. It's sort of just, yes, you're losing a lot of the money that you make from your venture. You're gaining favor by those that are around you. And so he does that a lot. And yes, the final scene, oh my gosh, it hit me so hard. Again, burning the ponzu, not the hair. But I think they just nailed that scene so much. It is Rudius going, yes, amongst all that fighting, I reached down and grabbed that holy relic. This is technically the birth of the holy relic. Grabs the holy relic, Roxy's ponzu, and realizes that, yes, despite the fact that I lost this one thing, who's to say that I lost everything? He's yelling at himself for even thinking that he lost everything. No, I still have things. And most importantly, all the things that Roxy taught him. Remembering how important that whole experience was. And then yes, Paul's out there right now trying to find the rest of our family. What am I thinking? There is still purpose to living on. And I think the inclusion of all those shots of Roxy taking him out for the first time, the shots of all of his family and Sylphie and everybody, that was all extremely important to him. The music playing and all those shots, I got so teary-eyed. It's just like, oh, that was so good. Really fantastic ending to the episode. Really did just bookend the episode with a great ending. It's so easy that when you run into some issue like this, some tragic loss of somebody that you really did love, to remember of everything else that you still have. No, this isn't going to be a fix-all for Rudeus right now, but at least he now sort of has that little bump to say, wake up, man. You have things to live for. Because again, he came here to die. But yeah, in the end, good episode. Really did enjoy it. Like I said, mostly around that ending part just really freaking hit me. But yeah, looking forward to the next episode. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. As always, if you did, make sure that like button down below. Comment. Let me know what's thought of the episode. Make sure to try to keep out spoilers beyond the anime in the comments down below for others. But additionally, if you're new to this channel, make sure that subscribe button so you get my content. I do news, reviews, first impressions, top list. If it's anime, it's pretty much here. Additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, and membership button down below. Additionally, if you are reading the light novel series, I'm doing Mushoku Mondays every single Monday where I run through the novel series. I'm currently in the 12th volume. But additionally, if you want to support the channel more, I have a Patreon link, tips link, super thanks, and membership button down below. I greatly appreciate everybody it does, and y'all take care.